The sky above Kepler-9's Terminator line was bruised purple, streaked with the flares of descending fire. Sensors picked up the heat blooms before human eyes could see them. Dozens, then hundreds, then thousands of metallic signatures screaming through the thin atmosphere like an iron rain. The outer colonies had no fleet left to meet them. The planetary defense grid was an empty promise. 2 half-charged cannons, 8 obsolete interceptors, and 1 experimental vessel buried in the hangar vault beneath Red Meridian Station. Admiral Reyna Saul stood on the command gantry, the feed from orbital telemetry reflected across her visor. Confirm visual. That's not a scouting wave. That's an invasion stack. Her XO, Lieutenant Commander Havel, swallowed hard. Spectral match. Keth Dominion class signatures. At least 40 dread forms. Heat signatures suggest troop deployment sleds. Estimated ground occupation within 6 hours. Reyna's throat went dry. The Keth weren't just raiders. They were precision-driven, logic-woven conquerors. They didn't invade unless victory was guaranteed. And against the broken remnants of the Terran colonies it was. Signal command, she ordered quietly. Tell them the Dominion is here. The comm array hissed static. Havel adjusted dials. Jamming field expanding. They're blanketing the upper stratosphere. No signal will break through. Reyna's gaze lingered on the planet's curvature, the thin glow of sunlight fading along the horizon. Then we hold on our own. Far below the surface, inside Red Meridian's vault, the single most controversial asset in the Terran inventory rested in cryo-lock, the Artemis 9, prototype of the Singular Deterrent program. 1 ship, 1 pilot. Infinite speculation. Commander Darius Venn sat in the cockpit, helmet off, watching frost creep along the canopy. He had been on standby for 7 years. Nobody had ever told him what Artemis was fully capable of, only that it was classified above fleet command. Every system in the vessel was sealed under biometric encryption keyed to him alone. A soft chime lit the dash. Darius exhaled. Guess they're finally calling in the ghost. He reached for the flight controls, feeling the latent hum of the ship's quantum core. Silent, alive, waiting. The engineers had called it the singular reactor, but even that was rumor. Some said it used folded vacuum compression to generate thrust beyond standard space-time fields. Others claimed it was just marketing hype for an oversized rail drive. Darius only knew 2 things. Artemis was built to fight alone, and it scared every admiral who'd ever seen its schematics. As he powered up the systems, the cockpit lit with subdued blue. Energy cascaded through the conduits like veins filling with light. Command authorization required, the onboard AI intoned. Commander Darius Venn, code Sol Delta 986. Mission type, last defense. The ship paused as if judging him. Then, authorization accepted. Reactor priming. On the surface, Reyna watched the first dread forms breach orbit. They unfolded like petals of dark steel, each kilometers wide, releasing streams of drones that fanned across the atmosphere. Her tactical map filled with red. Admiral, Havel said, we have no interceptors that can reach them before they deploy landing units. The grid won't survive first contact. I know. Reyna's tone was steel. Bring Artemis 9 online. The crew exchanged looks. Even the engineers froze. Ma'am, Havel began cautiously. The boards never cleared that unit for live combat. Its power signatures will give us away, yes, but if the alternative is extinction, I'll take the risk. She turned sharply. Prep launch protocols. If 1 ship can buy us time, that's 1 more chance to get civilians underground. At the same time, 2,000 kilometers away, deep in the Bastion orbital outpost, Dr. Lynn Calder stared at the telemetry stream coming from Kepler-9. She wasn't military. She was the last systems physicist involved in the Artemis project before it was buried under black budget classifications. She recognized the signature instantly. The pulse rate of the reactor field, the sharp harmonic at 17.3 terahertz. They actually turned it on, she whispered. Her aide frowned. What's Artemis? Not what, she murmured. Who? She tapped her comms, encrypting the line. Patch me through to Kepler-9 command. Priority override Calder Theta. Static. The Dominion's jamming made connection impossible. Lynn clenched her fists. The ship wasn't just dangerous, it was unfinished. Its control lattice hadn't been tested under extended load. The quantum core could destabilize and collapse its pilot into a localized singularity field. If they used it now, they might stop the invasion, or annihilate everything within 100 kilometers. Darius felt the ship awaken under him. The launch bay walls retracted. Steam hissed as the maglev cradle tilted toward the sky. His HUD flooded with target markers. 100 enemy contacts in low orbit, a dozen already descending. "Control, this is Artemis 9, he said into the channel. "Requesting launch clearance." Reyna's voice came back, tight but calm. "You're cleared, Commander. Objective is to intercept and delay orbital descent, prioritize survival, and intel return." "Copy." Though survival's always subjective. The cradle locked in place. "Godspeed, Commander," Reyna said. The clamps released. Artemis shot upward like a spear of light. Air ionized around it, pressure waves rattling the mountain base. For a moment, the clouds split open and a column of silver fire tore toward orbit. Reyna watched until her visor dimmed from brightness. The ascent was brutal. Artemis's G-stabilizers whined as gravity slipped into inversion. Darius's vision tunneled. His breathing became shallow, his heart sinking with the ship's rhythm. He had trained for vacuum combat, for asymmetric engagements, but this was something else entirely. The ship wasn't just a vehicle. It was a living computation of war. Target markers appeared. Drone clusters approaching, vectoring to intercept. They were automated. Keth Hunter nodes designed to overwhelm defenses with kinetic shrapnel and plasma webs. "Engage," he said. The Artemis's wings unfolded into prismatic plates. A corona of blue static flickered outward. The first volley hit. Shards of molten tungsten screamed past. Artemis rotated 90 degrees, minimal vector loss, counterfired 2 slugs at fractional light velocity. The impacts were surgical. 3 drones disintegrated. 2 more spiraled into debris. Darius smiled grimly. "You brought numbers. I brought physics." But the swarm adapted fast. New patterns, new formations. They were learning his firing rhythm. He pushed the throttle to full. The ship's reactor roared, but every joule was accounted for. The Artemis didn't carry missiles or fighter wings. It carried equations, adaptive kinetic bursts that used gravitational shear to bend trajectories. Every shot had to be precise. Every miss wasted irretrievable power. On Kepler 9, Reyna watched the feed degrade. Artemis's signature blurred into noise as Dominion ECM spiked. Havel muttered, "Telemetry blackout. They're targeting his sensor link." "Record everything," she said. "Even partial data. We'll find their pattern." Her console flashed red. Dominion landing pods breached atmosphere. Civilian districts were in their descent path. "Redirect local defense drones, full coverage." Havel hesitated. "That will leave the perimeter exposed." "Perimeter's meaningless, if the cities burn." He nodded, relaying orders. Reyna kept her eyes on the upper stratosphere. She couldn't see Darius anymore. Only the echo of one human ship fighting in a storm of metal. In orbit, the swarm finally split apart. Darius's energy levels dropped to 60%. Reactor heat peaked dangerously close to limit. The ship began auto-cycling coolant. Then something new entered the battle space. A Dominion dreadform, massive, angular, like a cathedral of obsidian steel. Its profile radiated power. The smaller drones fell back, reforming a perimeter. The dreadform opened a hangar ventral hatch. Inside, a pulse cannon charged, light coalescing at its core. "Ah," Darius whispered. "You noticed me." The blast came like a miniature sun. Artemis's shields flared, blue light collapsing into white. His hull temperature spiked. The cockpit alarms screamed. "Reactor strain critical," the AI warned. "Hold together," Darius muttered, slamming maneuvering thrusters. The beam grazed him, carving atmosphere into plasma. He dropped into the planet's shadow, using Kepler 9's magnetic field to scatter his signature. That's when he saw it. The beam's afterglow lingered, rippling across his sensors. oscillating at irregular intervals. He cross-checked the frequency. The pattern wasn't random. The Dominion cannon's recharge created a gravitational harmonic that destabilized its targeting field for exactly 8 seconds after discharge, a window, a weakness. He grinned. Got you. On the planet, Lynn Calder had finally broken through the comm barrier with an encrypted relay piggybacking off old mining satellites. Static filled her earpiece. Artemis, this is Dr. Calder. Do you copy? Darius heard her faintly through the storm of noise. Lynn, thought you were still planetside. I'm off-world, monitoring your field output. You're bleeding heat faster than the core can stabilize. You need to vent soon or you'll melt your own reactor cradle. Can't still have targets. Listen to me, Darius. The Artemis reactor isn't linear. It feeds off folded vacuum compression. Overheat it and you'll create a micro-event horizon. That sounds bad. That's fatal. He adjusted course. Then I'll make it worth it. Wait, what are you planning? He cut the line. Artemis accelerated toward the dreadform. The ship's nose glowed white from stress. The Dominion vessel rotated, preparing another beam. Darius armed all kinetic lances, recalibrating trajectory to intersect during the cannon's recharge lag. He had one shot. The dreadform's armor could withstand anything except its own field inversion. If he timed it right, his slugs could collapse the weapon's core from within. The beam fired, Artemis dove head-on. Shields vaporized. The cockpit went dark. Alarms howled. For a second, everything froze in light. Then, impact. 3 slugs pierced the dreadform's frontal lattice. The explosion was silent in the void, but bright enough to blind sensors. Fragments of molten alloy spiraled into the atmosphere. Darius barely held control as shockwaves rattled the hull. His energy reserves plummeted to 30%. The AI rerouted systems automatically. Primary weapon destroyed, the AI confirmed. He exhaled, shaking. 1 down. But the victory was brief. The Dominion fleet adapted again, reorganizing. 2 dreadforms began emitting synchronized pulses. The comm spectrum collapsed entirely. Reyna's command deck flickered into darkness. EMP net, Havel shouted. They're cutting off planetary control. Reyna slammed her fist into the console. Reboot backups. We're not blind yet. Her engineers scrambled. The air smelled of ozone and fear. Then a low rumble shook the station. Atmospheric shockwaves from orbital debris. The dreadform Darius destroyed was falling, and its wreckage was headed straight for the eastern continent. Trajectory? Reyna demanded. Impact zone. Civ Arc 13. Population 2 million. Evacuation impossible in time. Reyna's hands trembled. Tell him! The message reached Darius through a fragmented burst of data. Debris vector heading towards Civ Arc 13. Intercept impossible by ground units. Do something. He stared at the coordinates. The chunk was the size of a mountain, moving at orbital velocity. No missile in existence could divert it except maybe one ship. He set Artemis's remaining power to full burn. The AI protested. This action will exceed structural limits. Noted. He climbed fast, the ship groaning under stress. His reactor hummed on the verge of collapse. Calculating intercept trajectory, the AI said. No time. Manual override. He aligned the ship with the falling mass, locked the reactor into overdrive, and prepared for the unthinkable. On the ground, Reyna watched the debris streak across the sky, brighter than any sun. Civilians screamed, pointing upward. Then another streak appeared, smaller, sharper, chasing the first. Havel's voice cracked. That's him. Artemis 9, the 2 lights converged, sensors overloaded. The horizon exploded in blue. For a long moment the world was silent. Then the shockwave hit, rolling across deserts and seas. When the dust cleared, the debris was gone. Only scattered fragments burned in the stratosphere. Impact energy dispersed, Havel whispered. He vaporized it. Reyna stared at the telemetry, then realized the Artemis's signal was gone too. Commander Venn? She called. Static. She lowered her head. But far above the planet, inside the magnetic halo of the upper atmosphere, a faint pulse flickered. The Artemis had survived, but barely. Hull integrity at 7%. Reactor at 4. Systems dead except for life support. Darius floated in half-darkness. His body hurt everywhere. The AI's voice was weak. Pilot vitals critical. Reactor dormant, he coughed blood. Still here. Below him the planet turned slowly. Serene despite the chaos below. He thought of Reyna's defiance, Lynn's warning. The millions alive because he refused to let one ship be meaningless. Guess one was enough, he murmured. Then the radar blinked. Multiple contacts inbound, dozens of Dominion vessels, vectoring toward his position. Darius grimaced. Round 2, huh? He reached for the manual ignition. The ship hummed faintly, a ghost of power stirring. Let's finish this. The Artemis turned toward the oncoming fleet, its reactor flickering like a heartbeat in the dark. And as the first enemy signatures closed, the void lit once more. Smoke veiled the horizon for days after the skyfire. The shockwave that saved Seavark 13 left the atmosphere bruised and metallic, ionized dust scattering light into cruel colors. Across the evacuation tunnels, survivors whispered the same question. What had stopped the falling dreadform? Reyna Sol didn't answer. She couldn't. The command center of Red Meridian Station was half dark, half functional. Consoles flickered under the strain of damaged circuits. Crew worked by emergency lamps. Power was rationed for life support and comm relays only. The Admiral stood by the central table. Holographic display fractured, but enough to show one thing. Artemis's last known trajectory. A single amber dot, pulsing weakly in orbit. Telemetry intermittent, Havel reported, leaning over the cracked interface. Reactor output negligible. No active signals since the intercept. Reyna rubbed the bridge of her nose. So he's alive? Unknown, ma'am. The reactor's dormant. Could be dead. Could be hiding. Commander Ven doesn't hide, she said. He's buying time. Outside the reinforced glass, the dawn broke red, casting the landscape in the same color as blood. The Dominion ships still patrolled high orbit, their silhouettes drifting like predators over a wounded world. None had attempted ground contact since the explosion, but that only made her more uneasy. Predators didn't retreat without reason. Far across the solar plane, Dr. Lynn Calder watched the same telemetry from her orbital lab, eyes rimmed with sleeplessness. The Artemis signature had stabilized, barely, within Kepler-9's magnetosphere. Against every law of physics, the reactor hadn't collapsed. That meant one thing. Darius had found a way to vent the singular core manually, converting the implosion into a controlled detonation. The data scrolling across her monitors was mesmerizing, gravitational harmonics dancing at the edge of mathematical sense. No human ship should have survived. Lynn's assistant Merrill stepped in with a ration pack. You've been at this console for 30 hours. Time is relative when you're watching a miracle misbehave, Lynn murmured. She zoomed in on the waveform, highlighting the anomaly. See this? That pulse repetition rate isn't random. It's structured. Like a distress signal, Merrill frowned. From the ship? Or from him? Lynn input a code sequence using low-frequency modulation through abandoned survey satellites. It was an old engineering trick. Send data piggybacked on cosmic noise. The Dominion's jamming could intercept active transmissions, but background radiation, it ignored that. Artemis, this is Calder. If you can hear me, blink your reactor field once. She held her breath. Seconds passed. Then the screen flickered, an energy spike, faint but deliberate. Her heart leapt. He's alive, Merrill stared. Then why not come home? Because he can't. The Dominion's still there. In orbit, Darius Ven floated in silence, broken only by the sound of his own breathing. His suit's air scrubbers whined faintly. The cockpit lights had failed long ago, replaced by the dim reflection of the planet below. The Artemis was dying. Systems starved, coolant leaking, hull fractures sealed only by vacuum. Yet somehow the ship still listened. He'd received Lynn's signal. It had been faint, buried in noise, but unmistakable. He wanted to answer, to speak, but power reserves were microscopic. Every word would mean cutting life support by minutes. So he used what was left. The reactor field. One blink for yes. He drifted between consciousness and memory. Training drills in Martian gravity wells. The first flight test of the prototype. The day Reyna had looked at him and said, "You'll never win wars with numbers, Ven. You win them with will." That line had felt like a curse ever since. Now his sensors showed new activity. Dominion ships realigning. Not toward the planet, but toward him. They'd found the Artemis. At Red Meridian, Havel nearly dropped his tablet. Admiral, multiple Dominion vessels breaking orbit. Vector matches Commander Ven's position. Reyna turned sharply. Estimate? 24 ships, mixed dreadform and carrier class. Full interception pattern. So they think he's the weapon? Maybe he is. She ignored the remark. Can we reach him? Negative. No bandwidth left through the jamming net. Reyna exhaled through her teeth. Then we create one. Prepare the rail uplink. Redirect all reactor capacity to a point-burst transmission. Havel blinked. That'll fry our own comms, I know. But he needs targeting data. If we give him vector alignment on those ships, he might... She didn't finish. Hope was a dangerous indulgence. Do it. Lynn's fingers flew over the console. The Dominion ships converging on Artemis formed a tight formation, typical of Keth tactics when facing unknown assets. She recognized the geometry from earlier reports, a tri-helix pattern optimized for field suppression. They're trying to cage him, she muttered. Merrill looked pale. Why? He's one ship. That's what they said about fire before they saw it burn. Lynn synchronized her terminal to the orbital debris ring. The wreckage from the destroyed Dreadform was still out there. Metal fragments, reactor cores, shattered armor, all potential projectiles. She overlaid trajectories. An idea began to form. Merrill, get me a vectoring solution. If I feed Artemis the right phase timing, he could use the debris field as kinetic ammunition. Using what? Telemetry he can't even receive? He can if we make him feel it. Lynn opened the quantum resonance interface, the same forbidden protocol that linked Artemis's reactor to her lab during prototype testing. It wasn't communication. It was resonance empathy. The synchronization of two quantum folds. In essence, she could imprint emotion as a waveform. Not words, but intent. She closed her eyes and focused. Darius. Debris. Northward. Slingshot. A low hum filled the chamber. In the void, Darius's sensors registered something strange. A flicker, a tremor in the ship's bones. The Artemis's dormant systems began resonating as if responding to a ghost frequency. His neural link caught it not as sound but feeling. Urgency, direction, motion. He glanced at the radar. Fragments drifting above him, orbiting in slow decay. Debris from the Dreadform he'd destroyed, he understood. All right, Lynn, he whispered. Let's dance. He rerouted minimal power to maneuvering jets, angling the Artemis toward the debris ring. Each movement cost him heat he couldn't afford, but precision mattered. As he entered the field, the Dominion ships closed from behind, charging plasma nets. He timed the rotation. Waited for the pulse. The debris swept into alignment like planets around a sun. Artemis's reactor flared once briefly, triggering a gravitational eddy. The metal fragments accelerated, drawn by the sudden distortion. They shot outward as a halo of high-velocity shrapnel. The first Dominion ship took the hit broadside. Armor ruptured. Plasma fire vented. Another turned to evade, colliding with its wingmate. Chaos rippled through the formation. Darius's display lit with violent joy. You want a cage? Here's a storm. Down on Kepler 9, the blackout finally broke as the rail uplink succeeded. Reyna's voice burst through static. Artemis, this is Saul. We're reading multiple enemy losses. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. Darius's throat was raw. Copy, Admiral. I'd ask for backup, but I doubt you brought a fleet. Just a planet full of stubborn people, she said. We'll make do. Her tone steadied him. The kind of command voice that made suicide missions sound like choices. He adjusted course again, pressing the reactor further than it was ever meant to go. The power gauges trembled in red zones. Heat warnings screamed. AI status. Core containment at 23%. Hull fractures expanding. Can we weaponize the bleed-off? Pause, then. Yes, if containment is reduced further, micro-singularity discharge could be projected for approximately 4 seconds. 4's enough. He angled the ship into the heart of the Dominion formation. Lynn, watching from orbit, realized what he was about to do. No, Darius, you'll tear the reactor apart. He didn't respond. The Artemis's wings folded inward, forming a cone. The reactor's hum deepened into a vibration that shook the cockpit glass. Space warped around him, stars bending like reflections on water. Then he released it. The singular pulse erupted outward, an invisible tide that collapsed everything it touched. Dominion vessels twisted, their hulls imploding under pressure they couldn't comprehend. Those farther out veered away, scrambling to reconfigure fields. Within seconds, half the enemy fleet was gone. But so was most of Artemis's power. The lights flickered, faded. His HUD showed total energy depletion. He drifted, barely conscious. On the surface, red meridian sensors overloaded from the gravitational flux. Engineers covered their eyes as every display turned white. When the static cleared, the Dominion fleet was in full retreat. Warping out of system space, the command deck erupted in disbelief. They're leaving, Havel breathed. They're actually leaving. Reyna didn't cheer. She just stared at the hologram of one lone dot where Artemis had been. Get me eyes on him. Hours later, Lynn's ship docked with what was left of the Artemis. The hull looked like something forged in a dying star, half molten, half frozen, jagged from energy burns. She moved through the airlock with trembling hands, her suit sensors warning of radiation spikes. Inside, the cockpit was dark except for the faint pulse of the emergency beacon. Darius lay slumped in his harness, unconscious but breathing. She reached out, fingers brushing his arm. "You stupid, impossible man," she whispered. He stirred weakly. "Did we win?" "For now," he smiled faintly. "Then it was worth it," Lynn exhaled shakily. "You melted half the ship. Improvised. Reyna's going to kill you. Not if she promotes me first." He tried to laugh but coughed instead. She stabilized him with a stimulant patch. The cockpit creaked under residual stress. "We need to get you out before the hull collapses," she said. He nodded, but his gaze drifted past her, to the stars, where the enemy had vanished. "They'll come back. You know that, right?" "I know," she said softly. "But now they'll remember who we are." At Red Meridian, the atmosphere was both jubilant and haunted. The Dominion retreat left a silence heavier than any bombardment. Reyna stood at the viewport, arms folded, watching Lynn's rescue ship re-enter orbit. Havel approached. Colonial Command finally broke through. They're calling it a miracle. Some are saying the Artemis program should be reinstated fleet-wide. Reyna's jaw tightened. They see victory, not the price. One ship nearly tore space-time apart to save us. Still, people will remember this day. They'd better remember the cost, too. Her eyes lingered on the sky. For a brief moment, the clouds parted, revealing a faint silver glint far above. She whispered, "One ship, that's all it took." But beyond Kepler-9's orbit, in the void the Dominion had fled to, something stirred. Deep within a command carrier, Keth Overseer Voktal replayed the battle recordings. The human vessel's energy signature burned across the screen like a myth refusing to die. "Analysis," he ordered. A mechanical voice responded. "Unknown human craft exceeded expected parameters by factor 11. Reactor type unidentified. Probability of replication, low." "Low," Voktal repeated. "But not zero." He turned toward the viewport, where distant stars shimmered with distorted light. "Prepare countermeasures. If they can forge gods from machines, we will learn how to kill gods." The Dominion fleet changed formation, vectors aligning toward Terran space once more. Lynn's rescue ship descended through the atmosphere hours later. The planet's dawn painted everything gold. Darius, strapped to the medcot, stared through the viewport as the station loomed into view. Below, tens of thousands gathered on the blast plains, waving makeshift banners of the old Terran insignia. It had been years since anyone had flown that flag. Lynn looked at him. "You're a symbol now." He gave a tired smile. "I'd rather be asleep." Reyna met them on the landing deck, surrounded by engineers and medics. When she saw him step out, pale, limping, but alive, her expression softened for the first time in days. "Commander," she said quietly. "Hell of a job." He saluted weakly. "Just doing my part, Admiral." "You did more than that. You gave us a chance." He met her gaze. "Then we'd better not waste it." Reyna nodded slowly. "We won't. But next time I want a fleet." "Next time," Darius said, looking toward the burning horizon, "they'll expect one." The crowd below erupted as the news spread. The invasion repelled by a single human ship. Across the planet, across the scattered colonies, the story spread faster than light could travel. They called it defiance. They called it madness. They called it the day humanity fought back. But deep beneath the celebration, in the silence between breaths, Reyna Sol, Darius Venn, and Lynn Calder all felt the same unease. The understanding that survival wasn't victory. It was only the first reprieve. And in the heart of Artemis's wrecked core, still sealed in containment, something pulsed once, slow, rhythmic, almost alive. The war wasn't over. It was just beginning. 2 weeks after the battle, Kepler-9's skies were clear again. The radiation storms had faded, the atmosphere stabilized, and for the first time in years the colonies could see the stars unfiltered by smoke. But the peace was brittle. Every silence felt temporary, every calm a countdown. Red Meridian Station had become the center of everything: military command, scientific research hub, refugee coordination point, and the focal myth of the one-ship war. Reporters from the outer systems called it humanity's rebirth. Soldiers called it luck. To Admiral Reyna Sol, it was a ticking bomb. She stood before the main holomap, studying the expanding grid of Dominion incursions reported from other sectors. Even as the Keth retreated from Kepler 9, they struck elsewhere. Small probes at the colony rings, precision raids on comm arrays, surgical abductions of engineers and scientists. Patterns built like equations. They were studying humans in return. "Admiral," Havel said quietly, "Colonial Command request your presence at the Strategic Council. They want to review the Artemis engagement data." "Review?" Reyna's tone was flat. "Or dissect?" "Both, ma'am." She nodded once. "Send them the logs. I'll speak to them myself." The council session wasn't on Kepler 9. It was remote, transmitted through relays still half crippled by the last jamming wave. The feed flickered, voices distorted. On the far side of the connection, admirals and politicians argued like vultures dividing a carcass. Reyna presented her report in clipped sentences. One ship engaged a superior force. Victory achieved through strategic exploitation of gravitational harmonics. Casualties minimal. When she finished, the silence lasted barely a second before the shouting began. "Admiral Sol, the Artemis program was classified for a reason." One official barked. "You authorized deployment without authorization." "We were under invasion," she said evenly. "Authorization arrived 8 hours too late." Another voice colder. "You unleashed a prototype capable of destabilizing local spacetime. What if it had gone wrong?" "It didn't." "That's not the point, Admiral. You set a precedent." Reyna's jaw tightened. "Yes, the precedent of survival." She closed the transmission before they could respond. Across the system, Dr. Lynn Calder worked inside the dismantled shell of Artemis 9. The ship rested in dry dock, its hull open like a dissected creature. Radiation teams had stripped its plating and contained the damaged reactor core within multiple isolation fields. Lynn moved through the scaffolds in her hazard suit, hands trembling every time the core flickered. It still pulsed, erratically but alive, like a heartbeat out of rhythm. Merrill monitored from the catwalk. "Containment's holding. Radiation down to background levels." "Good, bring the spectrograph online." She stared into the shimmering distortion at the core's center. "You see that oscillation? It's not heat, it's information." Merrill frowned. "Information from what?" "Not from to. It's sending something." "The reactor's trying to reach out." "Reach out to who?" Lynn didn't answer. She didn't want to say it aloud. The harmonic frequency matched a neural imprint, the same quantum pattern the reactor shared with its pilot. "It's calling to Darius," she whispered. Merrill shivered. "But he's been cleared for rest. You think he feels it?" Lynn looked up toward the med deck windows, where she could just see his silhouette pacing. "I know he does. Darius Venn wasn't built for rest. The doctors had given him a clean bill except for radiation scarring and recurring headaches, but sleep was impossible. Every night he heard it, the low rhythmic thrum at the edge of hearing, as if the ship were breathing through him. He stood in the corridor overlooking the hangar. Engineers swarmed below, treating the wreck like a holy relic. Every screw, every panel cataloged, measured, debated. To them it was history. To him it was something alive. "Commander Venn," a voice said behind him. He turned. General Varick, liaison from Colonial Command, approached with 2 guards in full armor. The man's expression was bureaucratic precision, all angles and restraint. "Sir." "Commander, you're recovering well." "Trying to." Varick clasped his hands behind his back. "You realize what you've done? You've changed the strategic landscape of the war. Every colony wants an Artemis now. Darius frowned. That's not possible, there's only one. For now. What are you saying? Varric's eyes glinted. Command has commissioned production prototypes. They've recovered your combat data. Dr. Calder's reactor models will be replicated across the fleet. Darius felt cold. You can't just mass produce that. The core isn't stable. One miscalibration and you'll vaporize half a planet. That's why we have scientists. She won't approve it. Varric smiled faintly. Then we'll find others who will. He turned to leave. Rest up, Commander. You'll be the poster face for the fleet's next generation. That night, Darius found Lynn in the lab. Exhaustion etched in every line of her face. They're going to build more, he said without preamble. She didn't look surprised. I heard. You have to stop them. Reyna's already trying. But the Council's overruling her. They think a fleet of single-pilot deterrents is the only way to counter Dominion expansion. He leaned against the railing, voice low. They don't understand what it costs. That ship nearly killed me and the planet. You saw the data. I know. She hesitated. There's something else. The reactor's not dormant. It's active in a way I can't explain. It's sending patterns through the field almost like it's alive. Yes. They fell silent. The hum of the containment field filled the room. What if it's not calling out? Darius said quietly. What if it's warning us? The next day, Reyna summoned them both to the command deck. Her expression was storm-hard. Dominion activity detected, she said. Outer colonies Row 7 and Mira Edge went dark 12 hours ago. No transmissions, no escape pods. Just silence, Lynn swallowed. Simultaneous attacks? Maybe. Or tests. Darius frowned. Tests for what? Reyna zoomed the hologram. These are energy readings recovered from Mira Edge before blackout. Recognize the signature? Lynn froze. The waveform was unmistakable. Artemis's reactor harmonics. That's impossible, she whispered. There's only one reactor of that type. Unless someone leaked the schematics. All eyes turned toward Darius. He bristled. You think I... Reyna raised a hand. Not you. But someone did. The Dominion isn't just copying us, they're perfecting it. Lynn felt her stomach twist. If they've built a version of Artemis, they'll use it without hesitation, Reyna finished. And they won't care what it costs. Hours later, Lynn ran simulations in the lab, her fingers shaking over the console. Every model ended the same way. If two singular cores collided in open space, the resulting distortion wouldn't just destroy the battlefield. It could fracture the local fabric of reality. She slumped in her chair. They'll tear the sector apart. Meryl's voice was small. Then what do we do? Lynn stared at the holographic projection of the reactor. We find who gave it to them. The trail led through encrypted files buried in Colonial Command's archives. Lynn accessed them using Reyna's override codes, tracing data packets back to Bastion Station, Command's own intelligence hub. The transfers were authorized under a false identity. She decrypted the header. Varric. Her stomach dropped. She rushed to Reyna's office, datapad in hand. The Admiral listened in silence as Lynn outlined everything. The unauthorized data streams, the encryption, the Dominion parallels. When Lynn finished, Reyna's face was stone. Varric sold them the schematics. Why? He's Terran. He's pragmatic. He probably thought a controlled leak would create balance. He doesn't understand what kind of weapon he handed them. Reyna activated her comms. Get me Darius, now. When Darius arrived, Reyna's tone was all command. Varric's leaving the station within the hour, heading to Bastion Command. He's carrying data modules with Artemis design blueprints. Why not arrest him? He has political backing. We can't move openly without triggering an inquest. Then I'll move quietly. Reyna met his eyes. You'd have to intercept him before he clears the gravity well. Once he's off-world, we lose him. Darius didn't hesitate. I'll take a scout. Lynn stepped forward. You can't fly, not with your condition. Condition or not, I'm still the only one who can pilot that interceptor properly. Reyna's voice softened slightly. You'll have backup in the shadows. But if you fail, I won't. The hangar doors opened to the cold blue dawn. Darius strapped into the stealth interceptor. Its engines whisper quiet, designed for reconnaissance, not war. He didn't care. As the ship rose, Lynn's voice came through the link. I patched a trace on Varric's transponder. You'll have one window before he enters hyperlane. Make it count. Always do. He accelerated through the thin air, the planet shrinking below. Ahead, Varric's shuttle glimmered against the dark. He closed the gap silently, using debris fields for cover. When he was within range, he transmitted a burst code. General Varric, this is Commander Venn. Power down and surrender your cargo. Varric's voice came back calm, almost paternal. You of all people should understand, Commander. Power must be shared. One weapon cannot belong to one species alone. You gave it to our enemy. I gave it to reason. The Keth won't annihilate what they can mirror. Mutual capability means stability. You've never fought them, Darius said quietly. They don't believe in balance. They believe in inevitability. Then humanity must evolve faster. The shuttle ignited thrusters breaking orbit. Darius sighed. Wrong answer. He armed his railguns, low-yield, precision-guided, and fired. The rounds pierced the shuttle's engine array, crippling propulsion. The craft spun out, venting atmosphere. Darius docked, forcing entry through the aft hatch. Smoke filled the corridor. He found Varric strapped into the pilot chair, calm even as alarms blared. You can't stop what's begun, Varric said. They already have the data. I just ensured we wouldn't face them blind. By giving them godhood? Varric smiled faintly. You can't contain evolution. Darius aimed his sidearm. Watch me. But before he could fire, Varric triggered a control on his wrist. The cockpit window exploded outward, sucking everything into vacuum. Darius barely managed to seal his suit as the shuttle decompressed. When he regained control, Varric was gone, flung into the void, body tumbling end over end. The data module was gone too, ejected through an emergency pod before the breach. Darius cursed. He couldn't chase the pod and survive re-entry. He turned the ship back toward Kepler 9, rage simmering beneath exhaustion. Back on Red Meridian, Reyna listened to his report in silence. So the Dominion has the full schematics, Darius nodded. And now we can't predict where they'll build it. Lynn stood beside them, pale. If they ignite 2 singular reactors anywhere near populated space, the distortion could cascade through subspace channels. Every relay, every gate, gone. Reyna's gaze hardened. Then we find them first. She turned to the map. The Dominion doesn't hide weapons, they test them. If Varric's data reach them, they'll deploy the prototype where they can see the effect. Where? Lynn asked. Reyna pointed to the nearest candidate. The Eclipse Rift, an unstable nebula on the edge of human territory, dense with electromagnetic storms, perfect for masking a new reactor test. Darius stared at the glowing coordinates. Then that's where we go. Reyna nodded. You, me, and what's left of Artemis's systems. We'll take the fight to them before they learn what we already regret knowing. Later that night, Darius returned to the hangar, looking up at the disassembled shell of the ship that had changed everything. The containment field shimmered faintly, the pulse steadier now as if aware of what was coming. Lynn appeared beside him, quiet. You're going back into battle with a ship that barely exists, he smiled faintly. She'll hold. She always does, Lynn whispered. But promise me one thing. Don't die proving humanity deserves to live. Just live. He met her eyes, saw fear and fire both. I'll try. No guarantees. The containment lights flickered once, synchronizing with his heartbeat, far beyond. In the dark between stars, a ripple spread, unseen, silent. The first whisper of a new weapon awakening. And in the command archives of the Dominion fleet, a transmission played on loop human vessel Artemis 9. Status: Threat Priority Alpha. Counter prototype operational. Deployment: imminent. The next war had already begun. The Eclipse Rift wasn't a place. It was a wound. A vast nebular gulf where magnetic storms shredded comm signals and gravity swayed like a tide. Old freighters whispered about it. Navigators avoided it, and Dominion cartographers marked it with a single glyph meaning unbounded danger. To Admiral Reyna Saul, it was the perfect battleground. Red Meridian's fleet corps, such as it was, hovered at the edge of the rift. A dozen ships, barely repaired, some still with patched armor from the last campaign. The Artemis chassis, cannibalized for components, sat half-mounted atop a reinforced cruiser hull. It looked ugly, improvised, wrong. Perfect for the job. Darius Venn stood on the flight deck, watching engineers weld the last conduits into place. The hybrid craft was christened Artemis Refit 1, though the crews had taken to calling it Frankenstein. The name fit. Beneath layers of armor were systems meant for different ships, stitched together with desperation and ingenuity. You're insane, Lynn muttered from behind him, voice muffled by her helmet. We barely stabilized the core containment. It's not ready for reactivation. It doesn't need to be ready, he said. It just needs to work long enough. Long enough to do what? Collapse space again? He didn't look at her. Long enough to stop theirs. She wanted to argue, but the resolve in his tone killed the words. Instead, she handed him a datapad. Then you'll need this updated harmonic maps. If their prototype mirrors our core, it'll need to sync periodically to stabilize. I built an algorithm that can detect the sync intervals. How long between each? 6 minutes, 24 seconds, he smiled faintly. Plenty of time to ruin their day. Reyna entered the bay, her steps echoing on the deck plates. She'd been awake for 40 hours. Her uniform scorched from reactor tests. Her eyes ringed with exhaustion, yet her voice carried the same unbreakable calm that had held her command through the impossible. Status? Lynn answered without turning. Reactor stabilized barely. I can't guarantee containment past 90% yield. We'll take it, Reyna said. Then to Darius. You'll have 3 escort ships, small, fast, expendable. We'll draw their attention while you breach their core perimeter. Any chance of surviving that? Reyna gave him a thin smile. Ask me after. Darius nodded, eyes hard. Then let's get this over with. The fleet burned toward the rift. Beyond them, the Dominion prototype waited. Massive, dark, elegant. The enemy had built their version not as a fighter, but a fortress. A single colossal structure suspended in the rift's heart, powered by what scans now confirmed as an inverse singular core. It drew energy by consuming the local gravity well, stabilizing itself through constant motion. It was less a ship than a mobile event horizon, wrapped in armor and arrogance. Lynn's voice crackled through comms. Energy readings consistent with a twin-core configuration. They've done it. They made a dual reactor model. Reyna grimaced. Meaning? They can open a stable distortion field big enough to erase a fleet. Then we'll just have to erase them first. As the rift engulfed them, stars vanished. The world outside turned into pulsing violet fog, lightning arcing through empty space. Static danced over hull plating. Communications faltered, then reconnected through Lynn's relay satellites. Keep tight formation, Reyna ordered. We lose visual, we die. The escorts moved like phantoms, their shields flickering under electromagnetic surge. Darius's hybrid craft flew ahead, engines glowing pale blue. His cockpit was alive with warnings, the ship groaning under strain. He spoke softly into the link. Artemis, you still with me? The AI responded, faint but steady. Always. Its tone was different, lower, almost human. Lynn had integrated fragments of the old core's neural map into the new system. And somewhere in the code, something remembered him. Let's make this count, he said. They reached the enemy perimeter. Dozens of Dominion ships ringed the fortress, their hulls glimmering like obsidian mirrors. Darius could see the distortion waves rippling around them, defensive harmonics tuned to absorb kinetic strikes. Admiral, he said, their shield fields modulating in sync with the rift currents. If we hit them wrong, the pulse will just redirect. Reyna's voice came through, calm as a surgeon's. Suggestions? Hit them wrong on purpose. Explain. They're compensating for gravity drift using predictive models. If we overload one sector with false impacts, the correction will amplify natural turbulence. Enough to collapse their formation. Lynn cut in. He's right. The rift's physics are unstable. A strong enough disturbance could turn their shield into a weapon against them. Reyna smiled grimly. Then let's make them trip over their own perfection. Fleet, prepare saturation barrage. Darius, coordinate fire vectors. He marked the target zones on the map, timing the pulses. The escorts fired in sequence, dozens of electromagnetic slugs harmless by themselves, detonating in rhythmic intervals. The Dominion formation shifted, their shield fields adapting to counter an attack that wasn't real. The rift responded. Gravity folded inward. One of the enemy destroyers drifted too close to the distortion edge. In an instant it was crushed, flattened into a ribbon of molten metal before its reactor even failed. Direct hit, Darius muttered, and they did it to themselves. Reyna's voice was razor sharp. All ships advance. Breach through the opening. The battle that followed was chaos rendered mathematical. Human ships darted through electromagnetic fog, firing in arcs rather than lines, every shot curved, twisted, adapted to the physics of the rift. The Dominion countered with precision pulses, beams that split into fractal scatter. Lynn coordinated from Red Meridian's remote uplink, her voice a constant thread through the noise. Vector 3-7, Darius. Their shield matrix is folding. Keep pressure there. Copy. He dove through a field of plasma debris, the cockpit shaking violently. Alarms blared. His hands moved on instinct, calculating corrections faster than thought. Artemis felt like part of him again, alive, responsive, fierce. Then he saw it. The Dominion fortress ahead, its twin cores glowing like twin suns. The energy output was terrifying. If they finished their charge, the rift would become a singularity, swallowing both fleets. Admiral, they're seconds from ignition, Lynn warned. Darius, Reyna said, you know what to do. He did, but he hated it. The plan was simple. Use Artemis's unstable reactor to synchronize with the enemy's harmonics, then reverse the phase. A mirrored detonation that would cancel out both cores, if he timed it perfectly. If he didn't, the explosion would rip a hole through the sector. He took a long breath. Lynn, feed me their sync frequency. I can't guarantee stability. Wasn't asking for stability. Then take this instead. Faith. He smiled faintly. Always. The world around him slowed as he closed in. Artemis's reactor thrummed, resonance matching the enemy's pulse. The cockpit's light dimmed, colors fading into monochrome. He could feel the ship in his bones, the way a soldier feels the weight of his weapon. Synchronization complete, the AI said. Now invert. He flipped the controls. Energy surged through the hull. The ship screamed, metal distorting under the strain. His body felt like glass cracking. Outside, the Dominion fortress flared, two suns colliding, tearing each other apart. The rift howled, space bending like a living thing in pain. Reyna's fleet veered away, shields failing under the wavefront. Pull back. All ships full retreat vector. Lynn's telemetry spiked into unreadable noise. Darius, you're in the core field. You have to eject. Not yet, he shouted. It's not done. He held the inversion for 3 seconds, 4, long enough for the harmonics to collapse inward. The fortress imploded, a silent storm of light folding into itself. The gravitational tide snapped back, throwing Artemis clear like a leaf from a wave. When the light faded, there was no fortress. No enemy fleet. Only silence. Reyna's ships reassembled at the edge of the rift, hulls scorched, systems flickering. Report, she said. Enemy signature gone, Havel replied. Completely gone. Nothing left. And Commander Venn? Static Lynn's voice cracked through, faint but determined. I'm reading something, small, drifting. Reactor output minimal. Reyna closed her eyes. Lock on. Bring him home. Hours later, Lynn's retrieval craft found him. The Artemis refit was half vaporized, hull torn open. Darius floated inside, barely conscious, oxygen near depletion. His helmet cracked, blood on his lips. Lynn reached him, pulling his mask seal closed. You idiot, she whispered. You did it again. He managed a weak smile. Told you. It'd work long enough. She held his hand. You nearly tore the universe apart. Did we win? Yes. He closed his eyes. Then it was worth it. At Red Meridian, the victory report spread like fire. The Dominion Rift Fortress destroyed. Enemy fleets withdrawing from 5 sectors. Humanity had survived again, at a cost no one could quantify. Reyna stood before the assembled crews in the central hangar. The walls were lined with names of the fallen. She spoke softly, her voice carrying more weight than any shout. They said one ship couldn't change the war. They were wrong. But let no one forget, the ship didn't save us. The people did. The ones who built it, flew it, fixed it, believed in it. The weapon means nothing without the will behind it. She paused, eyes glistening. And that will cost us everything, every time. That night, Lynn sat beside Darius's bed in the infirmary. He was unconscious, stable but weak. She looked out the viewport at the stars, bright again, almost peaceful. Merrill entered quietly. Command's asking if we can rebuild Artemis again. Lynn didn't look up. We could, should we? She finally turned, eyes tired but certain. No, not until we learn how to live without it. She looked back at Darius, at the faint rise and fall of his chest. Because if one ship is always enough, then we'll never stop fighting. But deep in the rift, where sensors could no longer reach, fragments of the Dominion fortress drifted in silence. Among them a single black shard pulsed once, dark light folding inward. A heartbeat in the void, not gone. Not yet. The stars looked different now. Not because they'd changed, but because humanity had. A month after the eclipse rift, the war front quieted. No Dominion transmissions, no incursions, no retaliation. It was the kind of silence that didn't feel like victory. It felt like exhaustion. Red Meridian Station had been rebuilt twice already, its scars turned into memorials. The central hangar, once the cradle of Artemis, now housed a vast circular memorial ring, a hollow structure lined with names, still being carved as new losses were confirmed. The station floated in synchronous orbit, a scar and a beacon both. Admiral Reynosol stood alone in the observation deck. She'd refused promotion to high command. Politics disgusted her more than combat ever had. She'd stayed where she belonged, with her people, with the ones who carried ghosts on their shoulders. The galaxy called her the Iron Widow of Kepler 9. She hated the name. There was nothing romantic about survival. A soft chime broke the silence. Incoming transmission, priority code Calder. Put her through. Dr. Lynn Calder appeared as a hologram, hair unkempt, eyes sharp as ever. She'd left the station weeks ago to trace Dominion signal residues. Rumor said she barely slept. Admiral, she began, I have findings from the Rift debris field. Reyna folded her arms. Say it. It's not over. Reyna's jaw clenched. Explain. The fragments are self-repairing. Nanostructures rebuilding molecular scaffolding. The Dominion core wasn't destroyed, it fractured. It's regenerating from what's left. Reyna exhaled. How long? At current rate, maybe 6 months. But it's not just rebuilding the fortress. It's adapting. Every pulse, every fragment evolves the code. They're teaching their machines to survive entropy itself. Can we stop it? Not yet, but we can understand it. That's why I'm going back to the field. I'll need clearance to deploy autonomous research drones. You'll get it, Reyna said quietly. But Lynn, don't go alone. A pause. I never do. The feed ended. Reyna stared at the empty space where Lynn's image had been. The stars beyond seemed to flicker in patterns that looked uncomfortably alive. Darius Venn walked again, though slowly. His bones ached with every step, the lingering radiation damage a constant reminder. The medic said he'd never fly again. He didn't argue. He didn't need to. The war had taken what it needed from him. He visited the hangar memorial once each night. The walls glittered with names, some he'd known, most he hadn't. But one section was left blank, waiting. Lynn had insisted it remain open, for whoever saves us next. He traced his fingers over the cold alloy. You'd hate this, he murmured to the air. You'd say it's too sentimental. Behind him, footsteps. Reyna approached, her uniform plain now, stripped of ornament. She stood beside him in silence for a long time. You should be dead, she said at last. Working on it. You disobeyed orders. Also working on that. A ghost of a smile crossed her face. They're building statues of you on 6 worlds. Statues break easier than ships. Her expression hardened. Lynn says the Dominion Core's rebuilding. I know. I've felt it, she turned sharply. What do you mean? He tapped his temple. Residual neural link from the reactor. It's faint, but sometimes I hear it, a low hum. Same pattern as before. You think it's calling you? I think it never stopped. Reyna's voice dropped. If it's connected to you, could you find it? He hesitated. Maybe, but you won't like where it leads. Try me. He met her gaze. It's not in the rift anymore. It's moving. In the weeks that followed, the Artemis core's echoes grew stronger. Darius couldn't sleep without hearing them. Whispers in harmonic intervals, coordinates forming in his dreams. Lynn confirmed the impossible. The fragments were migrating, not randomly but purposefully, toward a single vector. Earth. They convened in the command briefing room. Lynn projected the data streams, gravitational anomalies, energy signatures too organized to be natural. Reyna paced slowly. They're coming for the origin. They don't need to attack, Lynn said. They're learning. If they reach Earth's orbit, they'll have access to our entire relay network. Every signal, every code. They'll replicate Artemis 1,000 times faster. Darius leaned forward. Then we intercept before they get there. With what? Havel asked. We don't have a fleet left. Darius's eyes burned with the old dangerous light. We don't need a fleet. Reyna understood before he said it. No, the Artemis project is over. It's the only thing that can match them. You can barely walk. Then I'll sit down for the ride. Darius, Admiral, if you don't let me finish this, they will. And they won't stop with Earth. The room fell silent. Finally, Reyna turned to Lynn. Can we rebuild the core? Lynn hesitated. Technically. Yes, morally? No. Every time we light that engine, we're playing with extinction. Reyna's voice softened. Sometimes extinction's already in play. Lynn closed her eyes. Then we do it once more, but this time we do it right. The construction took 6 weeks. They rebuilt the heart of Artemis, not as a weapon, but as a message. Lin redesigned the core with containment lattices that could transmit harmonic inversions through subspace. In theory, it could neutralize the Dominion's evolving singularities by collapsing their pattern into stillness, a kill switch for both sides. They called it Operation Silence. Darius spent those weeks reconditioning, forcing his body through pain thresholds that would have broken lesser men. Reyna oversaw logistics, commanding a skeleton crew with discipline sharper than ever. Lin supervised the reactor with obsessive care, recalibrating it against her own heartbeat. On the final day, the hangar filled with tension. The ship gleamed silver again, sleeker this time, its frame humming with restrained power. The engineers stepped back as Darius approached. He touched the hull, feeling the vibration through his gloves. Feels alive. Lin stood beside him. It always was. The question's whether we are. He looked at her. If this works, it has to. He nodded once. Then let's go quiet. The launch was silent. Artemis 2 rose from the bay like a ghost, gliding into the void beyond Kepler 9. Reyna watched from the command deck, hands clasped behind her back, eyes unreadable. Godspeed, Commander. In the cockpit, Darius adjusted the controls. Artemis, you awake? The AI's voice was different now. Calm, genderless, serene. Always, Darius. Ready to end the noise? He smiled faintly. Always. Lin monitored from Red Meridian's lab, her fingers hovering over the failsafe controls. She'd built an override, a way to shut down the core remotely if it destabilized. But deep down, she knew he wouldn't let her use it. The ship streaked through subspace, chasing the Dominion fragments like a predator through a storm. The stars blurred into streaks of light. Then, contact. The fragments coalesced ahead, forming a structure more organic than mechanical. A living web of dark matter, pulsing in rhythm. Inside its heart glowed the Dominion's rebuilt core, vast and luminous. Artemis 2's sensors spiked. We're inside their harmonic envelope, the AI warned. Darius adjusted power flow. Engage silence field. The ship's reactor flared softly. A tone spread through the void. A single sustained note, low and steady, resonating beyond sound. The Dominion structure responded. Its glow intensified, frequencies rising in pitch, trying to counter the silence with its own scream. Balance it, Darius said. Don't fight, mirror. Energy levels soared. The two frequencies intertwined, light folding over itself, darkness coiling inward. For a moment, reality wavered. Lin's telemetry went wild. Darius, the pattern's unstable. I know, and disengage now. Can't, it's got to equalize. The AI's voice softened. Darius, if this continues, both fields will nullify. Good, he whispered. No more war. No more gods. Lin slammed her fists on the console. Don't you dare, he smiled, faint, calm. Tell Reyna I kept my promise, the comm cut. The light from the rift blazed again, but this time it didn't explode. It folded inward gently, beautifully, until it vanished. No shockwave, no debris, no echo, just silence. Red Meridian's instruments went dead. Then nothing. Reyna stared at the blank monitors. Status? Havel shook his head. All readings gone. No energy, no radiation. It's like space itself just rested. Lin's voice trembled. He did it. He silenced them. Reyna closed her eyes. For a moment she looked 1,000 years old. Recover whatever's left, she said quietly. But there was nothing to recover. Months passed. Peace spread slowly, awkwardly. The Dominion retreated into quiet zones. Their transmissions sporadic and almost contemplative. Some believed the shared silence had reached even them, that the resonance had changed their collective mind. Others believed they were merely waiting. Reyna remained on Kepler 9, now a symbol of resistance and restraint. She turned down every request to rebuild Artemis again. When command pressed, she simply said, if one ship was enough, it's because one soul made it so. Not because of the machine. Lin stayed too, leading a research unit that studied the rift's residual energy. She published nothing. She smiled rarely, but sometimes late at night she'd hear faint harmonic whispers in her lab, steady, peaceful, almost human. She never told anyone. The memorial ring grew until it circled the entire station, names spiraling toward infinity. Among them at the very center was carved Commander Darius Venn, pilot Artemis. He made silence heard. Years later, Reyna retired quietly to a colony near the edge of the same sky she'd once fought beneath. She rarely attended ceremonies. But one evening she stood on the cliff above the sea looking up at the stars. The waves glowed faintly, phosphorescent from orbital debris. And for just a heartbeat, one star pulsed brighter than the rest, a rhythm she knew by heart. Reyna smiled. "Still out there, aren't you?" A breeze moved through the grass. For a moment she could almost hear a voice, calm, steady, certain, always. The galaxy moved on. Trade resumed. Children grew up hearing stories about the ship that fought alone. Most thought it a myth. Others believed it a lesson. In the academy, cadets studied the Artemis Doctrine, strategic asymmetry, psychological warfare, unity under pressure. But the real heart of it was never written. It lived in the quiet understanding between those who'd survived. That courage wasn't about fighting monsters. It was about becoming human enough not to. And somewhere, far beyond the reach of any scanner or beacon, in the cold silence between galaxies, a faint pulse continued to echo. Steady, balanced, eternal, not destruction, not war, just one ship still holding the line.